and Pierre A, who are co-editors of the astonishing new issue of Love magazine. I hesitate to even call it a magazine. It is volume 1 and volume 2 of hard-covered, well, they're books, basically, not a fashion magazine like you've ever seen it before. And they are a remarkable time capsule of this remarkable time. And so I'm really looking forward to talking to Ben and Pierre about how this came together. The obvious question is that this book, these books raised, because I'm not going to call them magazines, what is the place of a fashion magazine in this particular moment?
I think the role of a fashion magazine right now is bringing its community together and drawing its network together to really move forward as a unified thing. I think it's about coming together with your community and all moving forward and not leaving anyone behind. I think that's the role today.
Now, as I've worked my way through the hundreds of pages in these books, what strikes me is that the hierarchy that we're used to in fashion of editor, fashion editor, creative director, whatever, doesn't seem to exist in these pages. I think that what we are looking at here is quite a new way of approaching putting together a magazine. Almost, I guess it's almost the way that people used to do things, you know, in say the idealistic height of the 60s or something. How do you feel about that? Pierre? I have a million questions. I'll start with that one.
Certainly, I feel like it was a great way to share without having to necessarily compromise because someone was above us or below us. So it was really a conversation between everyone. So that's why we called it the Love Collective, because it was really about sharing ideas and sharing concepts and sharing a certain philosophy and bring that forward in making the issue. So when we completely remove the hierarchy, I think it's sending out a good message about what people in fashion actually are and how they actually work, which is a lot of people working together because they love fashion. So,
but kind of restricted in this situation by the fact that everyone was in lockdown because of COVID-19, and Ben, you make it very clear in your editor's letter, and co-editor Katie Grand also writes about this very, very, very honestly, that you were all ill with COVID-19 while you were making this magazine, and ill, like seriously ill, not just a sort of, you know, not just it came and it went. You were ill, and Pierre came into that situation as the new boy on the team. I mean, well, right away.
Kind of to correct, I mean, Pierre's been working with Love longer than I joined in January. Pierre's been, you know, contributing and part of the Love family for a lot longer. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure Pierre, you know, let's hear from Pierre, but I'm sure it was a very strange environment. You know, there were 3 senior members of Love who were, you know, very, very ill with COVID. I think there was, in some way, I don't wish that on anyone. I'm glad we could go through that together. I think it would have been very difficult going through that process with people that really didn't understand what you were going through. So being able to share information, you know, literally every morning we would speak with each other. How are you feeling? How's today? And because of the nature of this virus, everyone had very different symptoms. Everyone was operating in very different rhythms. So when someone was not feeling good, we stepped up and filled in that role, and all came together. You know, when I wasn't feeling well, the same thing. It was a really, you know, going back to your earlier thing, this collective thing, it was logistically as well as philosophically, that was the way through this. And, you know, as well as coming together as a collective intelligence, which I think it was really, you know, it was all hands to the pump for everyone.
Now, Pierre, did you feel, in your editor's letters, you all talk about how you had to pick up the slack. Like you say, Ben, some days, some people weren't capable of, you know, functioning.
Yeah.
Pierre, I know you'd been at the magazine in one capacity, but coming into it in this new capacity, did you feel it was almost like a kind of like a baptism of fire or something to be involved in this?
Yeah, definitely. It was really strange at first, because I was thinking, why are we even doing the magazine, you know? But then as, you know, time went on, I realized that it was actually necessary for us to do that, because that was what was keeping us together. And if I was able to lift a bit of that burden of, you know, by sharing ideas and just being there for everyone as much as I could, to me it was the kind of, like to say, baptism of fire, but it was also a way to help everyone keep on our mission, which is like, you know, putting together a magazine that's more than a magazine now.
And
then, you know, you came in, Pierre came in with so much, and, you know, we were exhausted and suffering from fatigue, and, you know, we had moments where we were fine, but then tired, and Pierre came with so much energy and focus that really, you know, that was a really great asset for us, really helped.
And then on top of all of that, when the fashion industry was already confronting this moment of massive upheaval, we had May 25th, where everything that happened in Minneapolis happened. And George Floyd, that single event seared itself on the world in an equally unprecedented way. It's funny that there's sort of this synchronicity, this historic, that it's like COVID kind of hoed the field, and Black Lives Matter seeded it. That moment of change, nobody could have predicted. Nobody could have predicted this confluence of events.
You
know,
I think it would be really interesting historically to look back and join the dots and really map that timeline. Those two moments are inextricably linked, definitely. You know, but I have a feeling also that spirit and environment of change and uprising also kind of started the year before with climate change, and really found that, you know, some incredible voices, young voices, really coming forward and steering that conversation. Obviously, Greta at the front of that. But I feel like that moment was almost kind of galvanized some kind of spirit of change. And then, yeah, I think you can kind of join the dots. Obviously, during COVID, everyone was forced into a very introspective, self-reflective space, where we all had to kind of look at how we live our lives, what our priorities are. So I think at that point, we were all kind of reevaluating a lot of things. And this kind of idea of when this is over, you know, we wanted, you know, to kind of change things. And then, yeah, like you say, with George Floyd, I feel like it was a perfect storm in a way. Everyone, there were no distractions. Everyone could see that. Everyone was focused on that. And we're almost in the right frame of mind to really take that on and really move forward with that.
I think what's remarkable is that people, you know, are used to the notion that fashion magazines take a long time to do, and there's a lead time, and, you know, whatever. You have incorporated the essence of Black Lives Matter in these books. Pierre, you've done a leaflet. I don't know, you call it a leaflet. It's a lot more than a leaflet, but this cover here, which is the cover of volume 1, one of the covers of volume 1. Yeah, how many covers are there in volume 1?
2.
2, yeah. Which is an incredible photo, which talk about that in a moment. But to have the essence of the protest already in the book feels to me like quite a feat of publishing. I mean, what did that actually take to turn things around, to take on board all of that and incorporate it into a magazine that presumably was fairly kind of done at that point?
I feel like it changed the course of action, and everyone in the team was very much aware that we had to address things now. Because when it comes to social issues, usually when something happens, we plan ahead and we try to see what we can do for the future. But the team was very reactive, because it was a matter of let's speak now, let's take a stance now, and let's be clear about our intentions now. So that's why we incorporated all of that in the books. And obviously, members of the team have been to the protest. I was in protest here in Paris, and we're all very much involved into the conversation. So it just made sense in a way to add it, because we're looking at very crazy times, strange time from March up until we're about to print. So if we hadn't added these Black Lives Matter and systemic racism conversation into the magazine, it would have been too late, for the next issue. So we have to do it now.
Yeah. And also we're a very small team. This was a really condensed group of people working really intensively, and that meant we could react quickly, and we could kind of turn things around and be really active in the middle of that.
But like Samar, who did this, this cover, this one here, Samar Kai Sundifu. How, Pierre, did you know these people already? Were they people in your world? Because
not really, actually, and that's when I realized that I too have so much to learn about my own community, because there are so many people doing great things out there that don't necessarily have the platform. And that's one of the reason we did the manifesto, for example, the little leaflet, we call it the manifesto, is to give platform to people that might not have a platform in the past. So I didn't really know Samai's work, and Amelia, who works with us, found him on Instagram, and that's how.
I mean, they are just incredible photographs. They are incredible photographs.
Iconic.
They totally. I mean, it really takes me back to when I used to protest vigorously against the Vietnam War, and those photos of Angela Davis and the Black Panthers, that they just have that same incredibly energizing quality. And then on a totally different level, Indigo Lewin's photographs. You said I'm actually reading from my notes, which is why I'm looking down. Where you, Pierre, you talk about an artistic but educational perspective. In your editor's letter, you talked about that, and I really felt I felt educated, because there were all these people whose work I found enthralling, who were new names to me, and I thought that there's such a value in this kind of these 2 volumes of new voices here, which is, I just feel if all of this really horrific stuff wasn't happening in the world, there wouldn't have been this opportunity. It's one of the sort of strange ironies of life that, as I've said in, the Black Death produced the Renaissance, that these horrendous political and cultural and social and economic upheavals and epidemic upheavals produce this opportunity for change, I guess. And that's what it seems to me you've really, really worked on here. It feels quite authentic. So I was very excited to see it all.
I think traditionally, historically, certainly within the way, fashion magazines have worked, it's very much like that kind of, that editorial perspective, editorial eye, is what crystallizes a moment. And it's about dictating what that moment means. And I think what's been really incredible and transformative about this is it's almost like that dynamic is completely reversed, and the moment tells you what it needs to be. It's, you just need to be present and ready and open to that. But, this was such an important moment where it told us what we needed to do in a way. It was urgent.
Because it's something else that you said, Pierre, you said change is not an aesthetic, it's a mechanism. And that cuts to the core of the way fashion usually responds to things. Change is an aesthetic in fashion. A skirt is short, a skirt is long, it's black, it's red, whatever. So change is an aesthetic, but to see it actually working, to see it like an engine, kind of reconceptualizing, reconfiguring things that you're familiar with is quite unusual. I can't think of apart from when I'm talking about those photos that used to move me so much, and then, or even like the Japanese group magazine Provoke in the 60s, 60s, 70s, when where all those photographers like Daido Moriyama and all those really iconic Japanese photographers were working in an incredibly activist sensibility to totally challenge and hopefully move the way people saw things forward. That's what I'm reminded of when I was looking at the thing. I wonder if you were conscious of making something that was radical, that was transgressive in a way.
I think in the way we were, but at the same time, it felt so natural. And in regard to change, we really wanted to not only give voice to people in front of the camera, but people behind the camera. And I feel like this is why I said it was a mechanism, because it's about a group of people or separate entities coming together and working into making something new and something that's going to help drive change, hopefully. So, yeah.
Ben? What did I say? There was one. Maybe Pierre can remember it. Something else that I thought was kind of funny and kind of droll. Everybody in their commentaries feeling guilty a little bit that lockdown had been such an enormous opportunity, that something that was supposed to be a kind of calamity for human beings had been a sort of inspiration for people to really examine why they do what they do and really question their motivations and so on. I wonder if it was the same for you. Like Pierre, when you were, I'm talking to Ib. It was interesting. It was the same thing, that this feeling of community, that being isolated, but at the same time having a stronger sense, because we talked to him a few weeks ago, and having a stronger sense than ever of who he can call on, which I imagine is a wonderful feeling for young creative people, that they really have the sense of who their friends are, in a moment like this.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I feel like I've never spend that much time on the phone with my fellow creative people, creative friends like Abe Kamara, like Rasharn. We found ourselves in a situation where we needed to share, and we needed, in order to continue and challenge ourselves, because we were, most of the time by ourselves at home, we needed to share. And so there was a lot more, phone calls. And that's why I wrote actually this, the first piece I wrote was about boredom, and how boredom can lead to something new and change, and not only evil, as a Kierkegaard.
That was a very interesting piece.
Yeah, so that's I think that's kind of what triggered me to reach out to the people I know and the people whom I care about deeply, and I feel like this is what everyone in the team has been doing. Like Ben and I were actually just talking before this live, and we're saying how we were a lot more on the phone with people, with the people in our lives, whether professional or personal, I assume.
Well, I think you said all romantic, didn't you?
Yeah. Romantic.
I mean, you asked me if I'd been on the phone with people, and I thought that your essay on boredom was very interesting, because were you bored?
I was at first. I was, and I found that it made me really angry, because I felt disconnected from everything. I didn't know what to do. And when I was on the phone, with the rest of the team, I felt really challenged, because I felt like I wasn't necessarily in the, the most sharp mindset to find new ideas and to be efficient. But then I realized that it was that particular moment of being in lockdown and having nothing to do that actually increased that feeling. So I had to fight against myself in a way. It was really
I think you have to really, during that moment, lockdown, there's a lot of pressure to kind of keep working, keep coming up with ideas. And, I think you have to be kind of gentle with yourself as well, be kind to yourself, and allow yourself that space and time to, maybe not have any ideas, and just kind of let it be.
I think that's one thing.
Important.
Well, I think that's one thing that obviously is very clear in the books is that you gave, because this was a reflective time for all the reasons we've spoken about. People were confronting themselves basically, in the isolation of their. I guess I should have done more of that. The books are full of people reflecting. There's people looking back over their work and pulling pictures that they took. Photographers. I mean, I'm talking about photographers here. There, people like Nick Waplington and Joel Meyerowitz. People who are known. As well, as much as the books are an education, and people that I haven't heard of and are looking forward to seeing a lot more from. There are all these people that I do know who are in Stephen Shaw, reviewing contemplative moments. I think what's so interesting is how much of it is about nature. And, that's obviously one thing that's been very, very, very talked about over the last few months, is so much of what we're confronted with is a result of us being totally dislocated from nature and stepping out of the kind of continuum of life and being this incredibly indulgent species. And
then the first thing we want to do during this moment is connect with that very thing, connect with nature again. It's
which is what you deal with, and also the other thing is how many people in the books are actually naked, and how many of the photo shoots are naked people, and that in a fashion magazine, the sense that something more important has asserted itself in our psyches. not how we not how we clothe ourselves, but how we expose ourselves or reveal ourselves has become more important. I mean, was that why there are so many naked people in the magazine?
I remember very early on there was a conversation about, you know, when we were kind of coming out of being ill and looking at just the logistics of what we can do to get this up and running and how we could navigate this new landscape. You know, there were half joking conversations about, you know, is the whole thing about being naked and
naked in nature.
Exactly, yeah. No, I think the whole thing, you know, I think it's just to do with reconnecting, isn't it, with the environment around you and yourself. And I think, you know, the product of that is, you know, some people getting naked in the countryside. But I think, you know, it's that process of reevaluating and reconfiguring everything is a process of stripping everything back and starting again.
Well, it's interesting you have Nan Goldin in there, almost as a reminder of what.
Well, it was interesting. She kept being, as we were interviewing photographers, she kept coming up as obviously as a reference point for so many of the photographers. Interestingly, particularly a lot of the younger talent. And so it was great. It was great to kind of just have her in there, just as a double page moment.
Well, but I know because Indigo mentioned her
exactly.
as being a huge influence, and you look at Indigo's photos and you see the intimacy. I don't think in Indigo's pictures you see the intimacy and you see the love. You don't. The dependency of Nan's photos isn't quite as acute for obvious reasons. But then it's interesting, Pierre, the opposed to the vulnerability of naked people and the intimacy of that, there are these incredibly extravagant fashion shoots. It's like, you know, when we come out of when I should say when, I must say when, I can't say if. At the other end of this tunnel, people have been debating, is fashion going to be forever clothing? You know, is it going to be cozy, reassuring, you know, everything that people have got used to, you know? Or is there going to be this appetite for extravagance and excess? And I think the magazine the books kind of deal with that duality quite effectively. There's a wonderful Tim Walker shoot with Ib Kamara's styling, which is, you know, the extravagance of I guess of the fashion dream. You know, people talk about fashion being a dream. It's a cliche, isn't it? And that particular shoot is really.
I think, you know, the real significance of that shoot was, you know, as I was saying earlier about the role of a fashion magazine right now is really bringing your community and your wider network, bringing them in closer. And, you know, the conversations were always about what can we do to help people. And, you know, that Tim and Ib shoot is about all the graduate designers who suddenly didn't have a show, had been working for months, years in some cases on their final collection. And then suddenly the plug was pulled. And that was really about giving them a space and a platform to show their work, you know. And there was a moment where everyone was having to leave London. So we kind of opened up the Love office for them to leave their collections there as like a fashion cupboard. And then as soon as restrictions allowed, that was, Tim and Ib kind of giving them this incredible fantasy moment.
Well, that completely consolidates the time capsule idea of the whole of the project, that this is 6 months. This is an extraordinary 6-month moment, not just in fashion, but just right through every layer of society. I mean, Pierre, the manifesto is obviously produced. Well, I don't know if it's obviously produced post May 25th. Was it? I mean, how did that come together?
I mean, I had the idea for a while to do something detachable, only because Love is it's a coffee table book, and I don't want to necessarily give it to someone. I want to keep it for myself if I'm going to buy it. So, and these 2 volumes are thick. So I felt like there was an element of, there was an element of circulation, like something that you could easily, chuck into your bag and let it travel and give it to, I mean, of course, after George Floyd, it became a lot more about, bringing new voices, people of color into the picture. And I was saying to Kate when I was pitching it, and to Ben, that I want someone to be able to take it out and give it to their racist aunt, or to just if you are at an event, you can just put it out of your bag. It's easily
and this is what you did in Ghana, is it?
Yes, that was Rasharn, and yeah, it's just kind of like an object that we wanted to circulate a lot more than our tomes.
Oh, Ben, say something.
You there, Tim?
I am here. I just had a thought, and sometimes this happens to me in the immediacy of the digital moment. I have a thought and it fades away.
Just to pick up from what Pierre was saying, I love that. We have this really like heavy, hardbound document of this time, and then within that, this kind of an immediate kind of object to communicate ideas. I love those 2 things working together. I think that's really important.
And also the voices in this, it's Lewis Hamilton.
That interview is amazing. It's such an incredible interview.
And William talking about the meaning of black hair. It's like a real, I mean, I guess when you say it's a manifesto, it's so broad. It covers so many different kind of notions that
sorry to interrupt, but that's why I said it was kind of like the barbershop or the hair salon. If you are, in Black culture, it's a safe place where you can talk about anything from politics to, what was on TV the previous night. And I feel like that's what I wanted this manifesto to feel like. I wanted people who would read it and grab it, feel that they were in a space where they could, be interested by so many different issues, but that kind of still relate to the common, condition of Black creatives in fashion.
I mean, that's what I just remembered what I was going to say before, when my mind became a howling void. When I was talking to Ib, I think it's fascinating that his group of people is people like Kelsey Lou and Tyler Mitchell, and all these young people who just feel like a wave. It was already happening. That there was this group of people who were rising, who with this idea that all boats rise with the tide. It just felt so supportive. I found that really interesting. That when you talk to one, you hear about what all the others are doing. And that felt to me like a new energy at that point. And now it's almost like, do you feel there's a sort of critical mass that the platform is consolidated now, and you feel now that you're able to actually make the changes that you want to make?
Yeah, definitely. But at the same time, I always feel like there's always, even for us, more to learn and more people to discover. Obviously today we have social media, so it's very easy in a way to discover people, but the base of the pyramid, actually, I don't like this metaphor, but the base is very strong. And if I need someone or I need something, I know that I can call Abe and he will be, introducing me to someone else. Or I feel like there's a good kind of interconnectivity between our community within the creative field.
I guess the way that love has traditionally worked, there was the same kind of notion of a sort of group of creative people who were very supportive of each other. I think Alistair, for example, Alistair's photos in the book, Alistair McClellan's photos in the book, super strong. His photos of London, the world without us. His photos of empty London, incredible, with the kind of people that he loves to shoot sprinkled in amongst that. And then there's all these other people who've been part of the Love family, like David Sims and Tim Walker's been part of the Love family. But Ben, have you encountered in your years in fashion, 10 years at Another Man as the editor there, but have you seen anything like this? Have you felt anything like this thing that is happening now? This sense of sort of activist motivation that is happening now, creative activist motivation?
No, absolutely not. Or beyond my career in my life, this is no. It feels like something very, very new. There's just a real feeling of people, galvanizing people together. It's interesting just what Pierre was saying just then. It reminded me also about with the young designers in the book. I interviewed Harris Reed, and he was talking about his year at college, Central St. Martin's, kind of not even consciously, have really created. Like he spoke about whenever he was talking about himself, and he's really become like, a really, important young talent in fashion, but really talking about those alongside him in his year, about not being this, I think he spoke about being no more kind of fashion sharks, that idea of these lone kind of creatures really all coming together and looking out for each other, sharing opportunities, bringing them on board for things. And I feel like that's a mood, a kind of something that's happening independently in lots of different areas, lots of different communities. For whatever reason, I don't know, but that's a really powerful thing. And that feels very new, I think. I think it's that that competitiveness doesn't seem to be as rife, doesn't seem to be the fuel behind people working. There's, it's about collaboration and.
Well, that is a sort of battle, that was the battle cry of the last while before all of this happened, collaboration, not competition. That was also part of how fashion was beginning to, was addressing sustainability and it's collaboration, not competition. But what happens next, you think? You say this is not a fashion magazine right off the bat, and it's not. I don't know. It is some hybrid of things that we're familiar with and things that we haven't seen and things that we maybe saw in a dream or things that the older members of the community saw way back when in their kind of youths. But if this isn't a fashion magazine, what is fashion going forward then, do you think? Because you both work you technically still work in the fashion industry. So what is fashion going forward in the light of everything that you've experienced in the last few months and also putting together these books?
I think fashion's always been about more than just the pieces of clothing and the accessories. you know, that's kind of the storefront, that's the window. Behind that, there's always been a much richer story going on. You know, fashion tells you so much about the culture, the time, the politics, the conversations going on. That's always, you know, that's always kind of driven and been wired into it. I think, I just think it's almost like that kind of behind the scenes part has moved to the front right now. And it's about humanity. You know, Pierre and I were talking earlier, and about, you know, this book we've created is really about humanity. It's about, you know, it's about humans and how they connect together and all their stories. I think that's, you know, that's always been there in the fashion conversation. It's just louder.
Pierre, what do you have to say about that?
I have to agree with Ben. I feel like it's, you know, it's just, we're going, you know, we're looking further than the clothing, and we're really trying to, you know, instill meaning and purpose into what we wear and why we wear them, and how we can, you know, how those, you know, clothes can reflect the world we live in. I feel like this is, even, you know, even looking at Samai Kai's cover, I feel like this cover specifically says it all, because obviously there is clothing and it's fashion, and that young man Marley looks quite fashionable, but there is so much more that goes, you know, behind it. You know, even makes me think of the Black Panther in the US, absolutely. You know, the style that
I think that photo is timeless. In a strange way, that photo is completely timeless.
That's its power, I think. Yeah, you know, it could have been, sadly, could have been kind of 50 years ago with the civil rights movement then.
That point is made by there were so many voices in the books, and I think that is interesting. You know, I've felt that something fashion has to do going forward is connect, you know, with people, is have conversations, we've been talking about storytelling and fashion for a few years, but these are stories, you know. This is I have this volume as well, which is a story with Denise, this woman on the cover, tells her story about battling cancer, with photographs by her son, taken by her son. And, you know, maybe that was a story you would have read in a magazine at some point. It's a wonderful story, and she's inspiring, but there's just something about this context with all these other voices where you feel that this is how fashion is going to, I don't know, assert any kind of relevance. It has to be human, you know. It has to come down from that sort of billion-dollar, you know, mass polluting kind of construction, and be this something small, much smaller. I think that's what these books, even though they're gorgeous and extravagant in their own way, are about. This kind of new,
and just being authentic. I feel, you know, I feel like being authentic is probably what we're aiming to do. You know, these stories are real, those are real people, and that's what we really wanted to highlight. Like Ben said, the word human, you know, sometimes many people forget that we're all humans, and that's what we're trying to do. Humans with all our flaws, with all our, you know, amazingness, but in the end, we're all humans, and that's, I think, one of the things we wanted to highlight.
You know, I think, Tim, what you were saying about, you know, fashion have been talking about storytelling and, you know, and authenticity, like you say, Pierre. I kind of feel like maybe it's just me, but those are kind of phrases we always used and were bandied around a lot, but maybe didn't really understand what that really meant and what it really looked like. And I feel like that really crystallized in this moment what it meant to be authentic, and what kind of stories we really wanted to tell. I think, like so many things, this moment has kind of really fast-tracked a lot of ideas that have been around for a while. It's really put things in motion really quickly. Yeah, I think it kind of really consolidated what those two things, authenticity, storytelling, should be about.
Yeah, you quoted Lennon.
Yeah, not John Lennon.
Vladimir. What did you say? I can't find it. It's buried in there somewhere. But what sometimes, remember it? You read it.
Yeah, it's, let me find it.
It's a good quote, Pierre.
It basically said, he said, there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks when decade happens. And I said, I don't know about you, but the past 4 months feel like centuries have happened. You know, I really feel like, I've forgotten where I read that. It suddenly came up just as I was sitting down to kind of write that letter. And it's one of the few things that made some sense to me during this whole time.
Okay. No.
Well, it just feels like whole periods can go by without really doing anything, without really moving things forward. And then whatever triggers it, you know, and certainly this period has been, you know, a kind of a chain reaction of events. It feels like we've kind of, history's sort of leaped forward. You know, it's kind of press fast forward, I think.
In this 6 months that the magazine has been produced in, and it comes out August 3rd.
Yeah.
And with magazine shops having obviously pre-stressed bookshelves to kind of put it on. This is 6 months with the pandemic and with Black Lives Matter changing so much, charging society in such an incredible way. This is 6 months. You're biannual. So in another 6 months, what do you imagine for your next issue?
I think things, you know, at the moment, the world seems to kind of shed its skin and change again week by week. You know, it's constantly evolving so quickly at the moment. You know, it's really difficult to know. I think all we can do, I just really believe in what we as a team, as a collective group, have kind of put together, as well as in the book, but also internally, how we've come together in the structure of that whatever that future moment is I think we will tackle that in the group we've put together now, that kind of collective intelligence and that collective team. I feel like that's we're committed to, that's how we will move forward. Who knows, magazine, you know, maybe a magazine can just be a film. I mean, we just don't, you know, no idea what the crystal ball, what's in there in the next 6 months.
It's going to be shattered. It's going to be shattered to smithereens. But yeah, what would you like to see? Now you've got this here as sort of a launch pad in a way. What would you like to see happen in the next issue of Love?
I think a continuation. I don't want to I don't want to share too many ideas, but I'm already thinking about what we could be doing to keep the momentum. And also, you know, to me, we've broken barriers with these 2 volumes. And like Ben said, it could be a film. It could be, I feel like there's so much freedom now as to the format we can use to convey our ideas, our ideals, our philosophies, and yeah, I'm just kind of like thinking as well, but I don't want to share too much.
Well, you know, this was produced from a time of tragedy and turmoil, really, and we could hope for better times ahead, but God knows if there aren't. You've got loads and loads of experience now in making an amazing artifact in the face of, you know.
I remain optimistic. I think, you know, as traumatic and difficult as this whole period has been, there's been amazing positives that have come out of it. And that's what we want to focus on and to really move forward with, you know. There's a lot of kind of good has come out of this quite horrendous time.
Well, I would like to thank you both very much. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Pierre. Thank you, Katie Grand. Thank you, Murray Healy. And thank you, Paul Flynn, the editors who are responsible for, did I miss anyone there? The editors who are responsible for the new issue of Love. I'm not calling it a magazine anymore. What am I going to call it?
The book.
Love, the book. Coming to a something near you soon. Something that's open near you soon. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.